Welcome everybody to the All for the Ring podcast, sort of a video cast right now. I'm coming to you from my own shed in my backyard. No power in here, but we've kind of figured out a way around it. This year's gonna be a little different, but the format will generally remain the same. We got do-betters, we got hot takes, we got matchups of the week, all kinds of stuff. So lots to get to, so let's just get right down to it. The draft. So we just had the draft. Well, we didn't just have the draft. We had it a couple weeks ago, and it went fine. It was a virtual draft, and hopefully the last full virtual we've had, although Eric and Josh and Steve Almonte were all together, and they made that known by having just full conversations while everybody else was just trying to, virtually talk, but they were just in person, so it's fine. Anyway, this year we're going to be a little bit different, again, like I said, because Eric has a very limited availability for obvious reasons. The obvious reason, of course, is that he's expecting his third child. Very exciting for Eric. Very exciting for Josh, who's expecting his second child. I've got a hot take about that a little later on. All right, anyway, the first week of the NFL is under our belts, and it was a wild one. And the big takeaways were Cam Newton and the Patriots changing up the offense, making it a little bit different, but making it work. And, relying a lot on the run from Cam, but we haven't seen a lot of long throws from Cam Newton, so I'm excited to see, how that develops, whether he's still got that cannon, which I'm sure that he does, but how he gets that chemistry with the wide receivers that he does have. Speaking of wide receivers, Tom Brady has a ton of wide receivers, and they didn't help because he overthrew the shit out of them in a lot of ways, and it ended up being a bit of a mess. Tough team to go up against, obviously, with the Saints. A lot of us picked the Saints. I'll get to that in a little bit. A lot of us picked the Saints to do very well this year, and so it probably not the best way to kind of sort of start out the season for old Tommy, but I think he looked okay. I felt like when I was watching the game, which I watched mostly Red Zone, but Red Zone was almost entirely that game because it was obviously the big marquee matchup. So when I was watching it, I felt like it was a lot of, I didn't want him to do well. I didn't want him to get hurt or anything, but I also, it was just weird. It was a weird thing. I was talking to some friends and saying, I feel like if it was just Tom Brady going to the Bucs, doing his thing, then I probably would be rooting for him. But then you add in Gronk coming back and all that, and it doesn't feel great to me. And then Leonard Fournette getting signed to the whole thing. Anyway, so let's talk about the draft. Before we get to some top-line stuff about the draft, let's talk about our league. The league that we have curated over these many, many years. It looks like we were on year 7 from my count. Started in 2014 with Josh as the first champion, Brian as the 2015 champion, Steve DeSilva as the 2016 champion, Eric in 2017, Josh his second chip in 2018, and then of course last year, the darling, the Cinderella story, Miles, picking up that championship ring. Amazing. Anyway, on the other end of it, we've got the T-Boner winners, losers, whatever. The first ever T-Boner winner was Eric in 2014, then Steve DeSilva, then me, yours truly, in 2016. It was a busy year for me, so it probably was. And then 2017, we had Chris, a T-Boner owner, I believe might have been his name actually, that the following year probably. Then we had 2018 was Miles in an unprecedented 0-win season, 13 weeks, 0 wins, unbelievable. And then 2019, our most recent and current T-Boner owner, Steve DeSilva. He had a 1-12 record last year, if I have that correct. All right, let's talk about the outcomes for the first week of fantasy football. So we had 152.4 points from Eric as our top scorer. He beat Benny with 89.56 points in a pretty big blowout. Then we had another blowout in 148.88 points for Ian over Chris. Chris only had 96.3 points, got to step that one up. Then Steve DeSilva actually pulled out 144.94 points in a drubbing of Josh with 97.72 points. Again, got to get over triple digits, guys. Got to do it. And I say that being one of the people who did not get over triple digits. Our second closest game was Brian. Brian beat Miles, 118.34 points for Brian and 112.8 points for Miles. So a pretty close one. It could have gone either way. And talk about could have gone either way. This is the one that I obviously know the most about. Steve Almonte edged me out. And that's not a sexual thing. I mean, it probably is a sexual thing, but it wasn't in this case. 100.52 points is all it took for Almonte, and he beat me because I had 96.2 points. And you know the real reason he beat me? Two reasons. There's two. One, I didn't start Calvin Ridley, who had 30 points. Incredible game for that guy. And the real kicker, the guy I did start, Connor, off of the Steelers crew, he started off okay, had 2.7 points, got injured. I was riding him. I needed for him on Monday night to just get 7 points. The guy gets 2.7, and then he's out of the game. So what can you do? These things happen. Let's move on to the scores of the week from week 1 in the NFL. In the NFL, we had Kansas City beating Houston Thursday night, New England taking down Miami. We had Seattle beating Atlanta in something of a shootout, but it really wasn't that close. Then we had Buffalo beating the New York Jets, 27-17. Even though your boy Josh Allen had a great game, but he did lose 2 fumbles. Green Bay beat the heck out of Minnesota, 43-34. Again, a lot closer score than it seemed like it actually was. Chicago edged it out over Detroit in a heartbreaker. That makes sense for Detroit because Detroit just cannot get things going. Philly got beaten by the Washington football team. They were up 17 points, and then the wheels came off, 27-17, which is actually a pretty common score throughout the league, 27 points. Another 27-point game is the Jacksonville Jaguars, who came back and beat Phillip Rivers. Tough loss for old Philly Rivs, Old Man River as they call him, 27-20. Then you have Las Vegas taking it to the last minutes as they beat Carolina, 34-30. Then you had Cleveland getting their asses handed to them by Lamar Jackson, looking sharp as ever, 38-6. Then we had the Chargers beating Cincy 16-13. Joe Burrow's debut. He looked good. He had a 23-yard scramble to score a touchdown, right? His first ever touchdown in the league. He looked great. He drove his team down the field. They had a chance to tie it and maybe go into overtime, but that Cincinnati kicker, whose name eludes me right now, shanked it, missed it, and that was the end of that. So it was quite the matchup between the Saints and the Bucks. It was two legends of the game going at it for 48 minutes, and it wasn't 48 minutes. I think that's basketball. Anyway, it was 60 minutes, and quite the game. New Orleans gets the win, 34-23. Then we had Arizona versus San Francisco. Looked like San Francisco's game for quite some time. Then Arizona turned it on. Kyler Murray had a great game, and they ended up pulling out that W, 24-20. Watch out for the Arizona Cardinals this year with Hopkins in tow and Old Man Larry still somehow kicking it around. Then we went into Sunday night. We had the Rams versus the Cowboys. I didn't watch this one, I'll be honest, but I did hear that there was some shady stuff at the end there. 20-17, the Rams edging out the Cowboys in a disappointing opener in Los Angeles. Then we had Pittsburgh versus the Giants in the early game, and Pittsburgh won 26-16. And then in the late nightcap, it was Denver versus the Titans. The Titans won 16-14. So there you go. There's our week 1 scores, and that's that'll do it.
What's going on? What's going on in your brain right now?
So this week for News and Cues, I didn't do News and Cues, I did predictions. I wanted to get everybody on the map before the first game of the season to say, who do you think is going to win the divisions? Who do you think is going to do this, that? We are all going off of almost zero information with no preseason games. So let's start off with the divisions. In NFC East, we got the Cowboys, Eagles, Washington, and the Giants. And it looks like 8 of us, 80% of the league, picked the Cowboys to win the division. And then 1 person picked the Eagles, 1 person picked the Washington football team. Moving on now to the NFC North. We half of the league, 5 people, picked the Vikings. 4 guys picked the Pack. And 1 guy picked the Lions for some reason. I think that one guy you'll find in most of these scenarios was Miles. He's a bit of a outside the pack kind of guy, but we'll see how it ends up panning out by the end of the season. So number 3 is the NFC West. NFC West is half of us picked the Seahawks, who looked great in week 1. 4 of us, 40% of the league, picked the 49ers, who ended up dropping 1 to Arizona, who looks pretty tight this year. And then 1 of us picked the Rams, who also looked pretty good overall. All right, so then the NFC South. We had 6 of us going for the Saints. which 60% of the league for the Saints is pretty hot. I feel like people pick the Saints every year, and they haven't won in many, many, many years. So maybe, maybe it's Breeze's last run, maybe not. Maybe Taysom Hill jumps in, maybe Teddy Bridgewater. Is Teddy Bridgewater on the team? No. Jameis Winston. Yes, maybe Jameis Winston's on the team. I don't know. Anyway, so 6 of us picked the Saints, 3 of us picked the Bucks, and 1 of us, probably Miles, picked the Atlanta Falcons. All right, so let's move on over to the AFC South. AFC South, we have the 60% of the league. 6 guys picked the Titans, 3 guys picked the Texans, and 1 guy picked the Colts. Now the Colts, with Phillip Rivers, they had a tough loss, but maybe they could be that dark horse team. Pun intended. All right, AFC West was a sweep. The only sweep we had, of course, everybody picking the Chiefs. In the AFC North, it's a pretty strong majority, with 70% of the league picking the Ravens to take that division. 2 people said the Steelers, and 1 person said the Browns for some reason. In the AFC East, it looks like we are still pretty heavily feeling the Patriots even before the league started. And we had 60% of the league picking the Patriots, 40% picking the Bills. Nobody picking the Jets or the Dolphins. I think you can guess who picked the Bills for the most part. It was Ian, obviously, Homer, and it was the 2 non-Patriots fans, Benny and Josh. And then I don't remember who the 4th person was, but my guess is Miles, but we'll see. So that's all the divisions. All right, for the NFC Championship, we had 5 people pick the Cowboys, 5 people pick the Saints, 3 people pick the Bucks, 3 people pick the 49ers, 2 people picking the Seahawks, 1 person picking the Falcons, and another person picking the Rams. So that's kind of a confusing way of explaining it, but whatever. It's fine. I can give you the raw data if you want, Chris. Unbelievable. The disrespect. Anyway. All right, so for the AFC Championship matchup, we've got the Chiefs in every single person's matchup, which, that tracks. Then we have 5 people who picked the Ravens versus the Chiefs, 1 person who picked the Texans versus the Chiefs, 1 person picked the Patriots versus the Chiefs, 1 person picked the Browns versus the Chiefs, and 1 person picked the Colts over the Chiefs. So I have to figure, as long as the Chiefs make the AFC Championship, one of us will be right, probably. I mean, it looks like there's 5 different teams, 6 different teams that are slated to play against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. So I think our odds are pretty good there. On the NFC side, I don't know. But all right, so then finally we have the Super Bowl. Who's going to be in the Super Bowl? 7 of you say the Chiefs can make it through. 3 say the Ravens make it through on the AFC side. So that's pretty easy. Then on the NFC side, we have a bit more of a dispersion, if you will. Number 3 guys picked the Cowboys. 3 guys picked the Saints. 2 guys picked the Bucks, 1 guy picked the Seahawks, and 1 guy picked the Rams. And then as far as the champion of the 2020 to 2021 maybe NFL season, we have 60% of the league saying it's the Chiefs, making it 2 for 2. 2 people saying the Cowboys, 1 saying wishful thinking, and that 1 was Benny, but 2 people saying the Cowboys winning the championship, and then 2 people saying the Ravens winning the championship. So quite a good dispersion. It really narrows down pretty quickly, as these things tend to do. So that's where we all kind of see it all working out for the whole season. Obviously, we're going to be very, very wrong, or maybe we'll all be really right. I think that a lot of the thinking is that because there wasn't much of a preseason, there wasn't really any preseason, and, continuity is important, and the Chiefs have been really consistently the same team. They didn't lose a lot of players. They didn't add a lot of players other than Edwards-Helaire, who looks like a hell of a stud. And I guess they're currently, Eric, are enough footballs to pass around and run around and all that. Anyway, so let's move on to our league predictions. And so we'll start with who we think is going to be the champion. Again, like the NFC side, it's a pretty wide swath. A lot of people voted for themselves. Very few people voted against anybody else. But it was sort of, it kind of made sense, but there's some wild cards here. So 3 people, 30% of the league said that Brian will win the championship this year in our fantasy league, the All for the Ring League. I'm just used to saying that after the... And then 3 people said, unprecedented, he's never won before. He's always been right in the middle of the pack, never won a T-boner, never won a championship. None other than Steve Almonte at 30% of the whole league saying that was, that's what they think is going to happen. Then we have 2 people voting for Ian, Also, one of those players who has never won or lost the whole thing, just been a middle-of-the-pack guy. One person says Steve DeSilva. I'm guessing it's Steve DeSilva who said that. I could look, but it's just too much work. And one person saying Benny is going to pull out that victory. Benny came very close last year. He was in the championship game with Miles, but just couldn't pull it out. Miles ended up pulling off that miracle Cinderella season. No votes were cast for me, for Eric, for Miles, for Chris, or for Josh. So there you go. Now, the fun part is the T-Boner. Who predicted who was going to win the T-Boner? And we have a kind of a bit of a funny thing, I will say. Half of the league voted for one person, and that person has never even won the T-Boner in the past. And that person, I'm not going to get to it. I'm going to go for the other people first. Benny picked himself because he's a humble guy. Chris got 2 votes, 20% of the league. Miles got two votes, 20% of the league. And 50% of the league said that Josh is going to win the T-Boner this year. So that's a tough one. Tough one. Half the league thinks you're going to lose. And there was no, I don't think there was any coordination or anything like that. I certainly didn't coordinate with anybody for my pick, but I'll keep my pick close to the chest. It was Josh. Anyway, so let's move on to All right, Pick'em. That's right, Pick'em is back. And we've got a hell of a week. We had 3 guys with 11-5 records, but it came down to the points as it often does. Chris, you said it so eloquently. And eventually the winner ended up being a tie between none other than Ben and Chris. Shit talking Chris. Good job, guys. You both get $25, and they'll put that into the overall spreadsheet, all that, and we'll be getting there. So Miles came close. He had some great, choosing against the pack choices. Generally speaking, that was okay. Just one. It was the Rams that he picked over the Cowboys. Everybody else picked the Cowboys. That was no good on our part. And we were never entirely wrong this week, so that's a good thing. Chris picked Jacksonville. He was the only person to pick Jacksonville. He got that right. I picked Arizona. I was the only person to get that right, but that didn't help me because I had a terrible picking week. And Almonte picked the Washington football team, and they pulled it out over Philly. So well done, guys. We got a lot of football left. Right now, overall, we are a 59% correct, but we're not choosing against the spread, so it really doesn't count. All right, moving on. All right, the top 5 power rankings. Here we go. So, number 1, with the top score of the league, it's Eric. Spoiler alert, this is pretty much just going to be by the scores, just because the first week we're kind of feeling each other out, kind of feeling each other up, everything else. Eric saw a decent game from Drew Brees, huge game from Devontae Adams, 35.6 points, 21 points from Dalvin Cook, 25 from Raheem Mostert, one of his steals, actually his biggest steal of the draft, and just an overall great game, just solid 152 points. You're going to beat most people in the league most weeks if you're putting those numbers up. To be fair, he did play against Benny, who had a terrible game. At number 2, it's Ian with 148.88 points. His bellwether cow, who he will likely be riding this whole season, was Russell Westbrook. Russell Wilson, who had 39.78 points, one of the highest scoring guys in the whole damn league. And then he got double digits from almost everybody else, short of one, Le'Veon Bell. So he's on the IR now, so I guess he doesn't have to worry about that as much. Travis Kelce put up 14 points. Rod Woods, 14.9. Juju had 21.9 because, of course, he wasn't on my team, so he's going to do well. Amari Cooper, 13 points in the loss. Not great, but, it's fine. He even had 15 points from Will Fuller, the 5th on the bench. So 148.88 points. That's good for number 2 spot in the whole league. At number 3, already matching last year's entire total of wins, it's DeSilva. And I'm talking about Steve. 144.94 points. Patrick Mahomes had a pedestrian game for him, 26.44 points. But Adam Thielen had a monster game at 28. Josh Jacobs at 33.9. I mean, you have those guys. That's just going to get you right to where you want to be to start. Steve's quarterback situation is a little bit iffy overall, but I mean, he's got an embarrassment of riches. He's got Pat Mahomes for 26.44 points, as mentioned. Cam Newton with 25.7, no slouch. And then, of course, he had the big one, 41.76 points on his bench from Aaron Rodgers. A hell of a game. You got to wonder if he's going to be starting Aaron Rodgers going forward or if he's going to keep with the Patrick Mahomes train. Tough decision, but it's a decision we'd all love to be making right now. At number 4, with a great new team name, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I hope you thought of that, and I'm going to give you credit for it as if you thought of it. Please don't tell me you haven't thought of it and that you copied it from someone else, Brian. Anyway, Brian, 118.44 points in a win over Miles, who also has a clever new name. So where did he get those points from? Let's find out. It was Dak Prescott at 19.64 points. It was 27 points from McCaffrey, who just a stud all around. Then we had 12.7 points from Todd Gurley, and we had Edwards-Helaire, the name of his team, at 19.8 points. A great first start. Obviously, he's on the Chiefs, so that never hurt anybody. So a good game overall, not his best, and certainly not the best of the league, but enough to get the job done, and a nice start for Brian. Yet again, he's a solid player, that Brian, I'll tell you. And rounding out our top 5 at number 5, it's Steve Almonte with just over 100 points. You know, he didn't have the best game, but he was playing against me, and he didn't need it. So right now, he can enjoy that 5 spot. I wonder how things are going to continue because it didn't seem like a lot of great performance. He had 22.82 points from Deshaun Watson on Thursday night. He had Aaron Jones with 15.6 points, 10 points from Butker, 10 points from Miller, and 21 points from Kamara. So Kamara with the question marks, not really with the question marks. He's still on a great team, still on a great offense. So, you know, let's see if he can pick it up from there. 100 points is really not going to cut it a lot of times, but we're going to go ahead and value the wins the most right now, and he's got the win. So there you go, top 5.
Oh God, here it comes. Oh, hot, 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 hot. Hot, 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 hot.
All right, our hot take of the week. This is a bit of an unconventional one. It's not a football one. Here's my hot take. My hot take is that Josh is going to have a girl. Now, here's why I think that. So you could argue, okay, well, what about his brother Pat, who has 2 boys? But then I would counter that with, what about his brother Eric, who has a girl and a boy and as yet unknown? So my reasoning for this is, and it's really not great, is that everyone else who has children in our league, in the Off of the Ring League, has a girl. So we've got Miles has a girl, his firstborn. Steve Almonte has a girl, his firstborn. We have Eric, his firstborn. My firstborn. We've got Ian's secondborn. And then, oh gosh, am I missing somebody? Oh, of course I'm missing somebody. I'm missing Chris, who has first, second, and thirdborn, all girls. So my guess, Josh is going to have a girl, and that is my hot take of the week. Take it to the bank eventually, whenever we find out. Moving on to the bottom half of the power rankings at number 6 with 112.8 points, it's Miles. Team name, My Chubb Ertz. It's great. It's just great. It's just a solid team name. Nice sex joke. Good. Anyway, what wasn't good was the outcome. He got his most performance from Matty Ice and from DeAndre Hopkins. Matty Ice with 28.9 points, DeAndre Hopkins with 22.1, 13 points from Tyler Lockett, and 12 points from Mason Crosby, but the rest is all single digits, and that's just not going to get it done in this league, unless, again, you're playing me, Josh, or Chris. Otherwise, tough. He has J.K. Dobbins, and so that should be a good choice for the future, but it's all uphill because he's got me to play, so that's hard, I think. At number 7, after getting destroyed with 97.72 points, it's Josh. Josh, our predicted winner of the T-Boner by half the league. Anyway, he had Joe Burrow, who put up 16 points. He had Julio Jones at 21.2 points and Zeke at 26. But beyond that, again, not a great showing for the rest of the team, including 2.2 points for Matt Breida and a sad 3.7 from OBJ, who hasn't found that rhythm with Joe Burrow just yet. But also, Joe Burrow's not on his team, so he will almost never find that rhythm. You know the person I was talking about? It's Baker Mayfield. He should have chemistry with him, but he doesn't. Anyway, not a lot of upside on the bench or anything like that. So Josh has got his work cut out for him, but we shall see how he does in week 2 as he plays Almonte. He's playing Almonte, and it looks like he's barely the underdog, so that should be pretty good. In the 8th spot, getting blown out as well, even worse than Josh got blown out, it's Chris. Chris, number 8. Kyler Murray put up a good portion of his points at 28.3 points. DJ Metcalf had 17.5, and then Kenyon Drake had 13.5. And the New England defense showing up, getting 11 points. But it just wasn't enough, and it wasn't nearly enough. He would have barely beaten me, and I'm sure he'd be the first person to tell you that. But that would have been a very, very, it would have been a tough loss for me. So I'm glad that we didn't play each other this week. So it's, a lot of uphill battles to fight. Not a lot of people on the old bench So there's some stuff to figure out, but Michael Thomas is not going to get 3.2 points a game. He is doubtful for the upcoming game, so that's a tough one. And Marlon Mack, we should mention this. Even though the team name is Return of the Mac, Mack will not be returning. Ended up getting put on the IR because of an awful, I think it was an ACL injury. So that's tough news for the team name. Tough news for the Colts. Not really so tough for Jonathan Taylor, their rookie running back, who did have quite a nice game. But from what I can tell, it looks like Chris doesn't have that guy, so he's going to have to figure out another running back and maybe a change in name. Although you could also say that the name could be in reference to that cool, pretty good Google ad, The Return of the Mac, where they use their song Return of the Mac. That's a fun one. Anyway. So moving on in the power rankings, we've got our bottom 2 spots. At number 9, barely edged out by Chris. I mean, you could argue that my game was a lot closer, so maybe I should have been there. But anyway, at number 9, it's me. I know exactly what I did wrong. I have 1 week to fix it. I really have very little time to fix it. I've got Lamar Jackson still, who had 34.5 points. I've got Tyreek Hill with 13. Julian Edelman with 10.5. Chris Carson, 21.6 points. Real nice game. Gonna be tough to start him against the Patriots this week, but sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do. And in our bottom spot, after getting the doors blown off his team by about 60 points by Eric, it's Benny. Benny in the bottom of the barrel spot, really just a tough game all around. His best player was Tom Brady at 24.46 points. Then he had Mark Andrews at 20.3. Will Lutz at 10 points, and then beyond that, it is just dirty. Really not great looking. Mark Ingram only had 2.9 points in that blowout win, so that's concerning. Chicago's defense had 3 points against Detroit, and he left not a lot of points on the bench. He had Ben Roethlisberger, who marginally got better than Brady, but it's not going to make up a 60-point difference any way you cut it. So he's got some work cut out for him, but if anybody can figure it out, it's last year's runner-up, and that's Benny. So that's the bottom half of the power rankings. I will have more scripted power rankings in the future, probably.
Are you ready to touch football?
All right, let's look at key matchups for the week 2 of the NFL season. We have got a barn burner for Sunday night. It's Seattle versus the Patriots in Seattle. Cam in prime time with a new team against a red-hot Seattle team. Going to be a tough one, probably, but it should be a fun one to watch. I might even set up the outdoor projector. I don't know. We'll see. Don't know if we'll have enough time. Don't know about the weather. Haven't even looked at it. Another one, Carolina versus Tampa. Carolina looking like a half-decent team. Tough loss against Las Vegas. They're looking to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and take one down against the Bucs. And again, another divisionary game, 2 in a row to start off Tom's Tampa career. And looks like it's going to be quite the game. And I've got to figure that Tom is going to come with that vengeance we all know so well. And we'll see how he ends up bouncing back. Will he start out his second team at 0-2? It could be a disaster, but we're all going to be watching it. I believe that's at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Another 1 o'clock game is the Falcons versus Cowboys. Yet another kind of similar thing where if the Cowboys lose again, are we hitting up the alarm bells? It's against the Falcons, who they should beat, but the Falcons have a good offense, and the Cowboys, we don't know. We don't know how they're going to be, and they are America's team, so we have to watch out for that. And we got to watch out for this matchup. It's going to be interesting. We're going to find out if, with their backs against the wall, whether Dak and Zeke can pull it together, or if it's going to end up being a disappointment. In fantasy, we've got the first Brother Bowl with Miles versus Luke, a classic rivalry between two guys who have spotty records in fantasy overall. But it should be interesting, and we will both be watching the scores somewhat closely, but probably not that closely. Other matchups to watch are Steve DeSilva and Eric, and then Ian versus Brian. These are 4 guys who have had a great start to their season. Brian eked out a win, but it was still a solid one, and the other guys really blew out their competition. So it'll be interesting to see how they do when they have some real competition. And it could level the playing field pretty well. Make this a competitive league throughout.
You have to step up.
Unleash them.
All right, we got the T-Boner Watch. The T-Boner Watch is always a fun one. And, it's a simple one because really it just ends up being the worst scoring person and the worst record. It's a combination of the two. And right now, in that number 1 spot, which is the number 10 spot, it's Benny. Benny's on the T-Boner Watch. He's got that hot seat coming at him, and that means he's got to step it up or step it out. 89.56 points ain't gonna do shit in this league unless you're playing me or Josh or Chris. Otherwise, you're screwed. And he wasn't playing those people. He was playing Eric, who is currently the top dog. Long season to go, 12 more games, but get your shit together.
Do better.
Do better.
In the do better position this week, and I don't want to be beaten up on the same guy 3 times in one episode, because that's what happened a lot last year with Steve DeSilva, because it was T-Boner Watch, it was the power rankings, and it was the do better. So do better this week, though, will go to Benny. You got to do better. You got to do better. Your team's got to do better, both in fantasy and the Cowboys. And I think you can do it. I just need for you to step it up. Step it up. All right, so that's the inaugural episode of the 2020 to 2021 fantasy football season, the All for the Ring podcast / videocast, week 2 version. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this, and if you did, engage with me. Let me know how I did. Give me some feedback. That's always warranted and needed. I know it's running a little long, but that's the way it goes. Anyway, from my shed to yours, have a good one. Enjoy the football over the weekend. Go Pats. Wear a mask when required. And don't give out your social security number. Keep it sleazy. And we'll catch you on the flippity flop. Whew. I am sweaty.